Welcome to Sober on Purpose, the show where emotional sobriety and the messy reality of loving someone with addiction meet. We're here to help you discover peace, purpose, and healing through Jesus, no matter how chaotic life feels. Welcome, Sober on Purpose family. I am delighted to present Kim Sorrelle. I mean, she is a speaker, an author, an entrepreneur, director of a humanitarian organization, has a family, talk show host. I don't know when she sleeps. When you get on her website, she's gonna share with you about what to walk through life doing Corinthians 13 for a whole year. And then her latest book, Love Is, talks about what love is. So Kim, give us a little bit about your family background and what brings you on a show called Sober on Purpose.
Sure. Thank you for having me. First of all, great show. People need this. People need what you're offering. People need you. So thank you for what you're doing. So I was raised in a home that in the 60s and the 70s, they came home from work, they made a drink, right? And at first it was wine at dinner, and then it was some scotch before the wine. And then pretty soon it's a couple of scotches before the wine and a scotch after. And anyway, my mom was an alcoholic. And we did not handle it well. We didn't handle it well. We didn't confront it. We didn't do anything about it. And she actually ended up committing suicide because she struggled. Yes, which was awful. So then when I was faced with dealing with my son and his addiction to alcohol, I thought, man, I'm not blowing this one. I already blew it once and I am not going to blow this one. And it was hard to know at first, like what to do, how to handle it. He, by the way, is doing fantastic. Yay. But I think the big thing that I tried to focus on is the alcoholism is not him. He's a person. And that's who I love. He's who I love. And he's dealing with this, but that's not who he is. Mm-hmm. That shouldn't define him. He's a person that I love.
How do you pull, so in your biblical work, in all of that, how are you defining love? And then how are you showing love?
Great questions. Yeah. So I lost my husband several years ago and decided I was going to figure out the true meaning of love. So I took 1 Corinthians 13 and then I took one word or phrase a month. I was in Haiti most of the time when I was figuring it out. And the things that I figured out about love just blew my mind and rocked my world and changed my life. There's so much about love that is so misunderstood and so much about love that comes into play with addictions. Mm-hmm. When you love, like there's myths about love that get people bound up. Like, you know, you've probably heard, have you ever heard anyone say love's a two-way street? Mm-hmm. Right? It's not. Love is not a two-way street. Love is 100% up to you. You know, you give birth, you got total control over that baby. You decide when the baby eats, when the baby has a bath, when the baby is down on the ground on a blanket, you know, whatever the baby's doing. But 6, 7, 8 months later, all your Tupperware is all over the kitchen floor. Pots and pans are banging everywhere. You have lost control. And I promise you, my friend, you never get it back again.
No, you don't. No. My husband called him the little emperor.
I love that.
He was a little emperor because he dictated all our lives. And then we had a second little emperor come along and we're still at the tail end of full-time raising of kids and blessing everything I ever wanted. Wouldn't change a bit, but you're right. You'd never get it back.
No, you sure don't. And it's true of everybody. You don't control anybody but yourself. You're the only one you have any control over. And love, you know, in John, it says God is love. Not that God loves, but that he is love. Uh-huh. And we're supposed to love. That means we're love. We're created in his image, right? We're love. So love is walking, talking, living, breathing, doing. And you love because that's what you're supposed to do, period. Not because you expect it to come back to you a certain way, not because they've done something to sort of earn your love. That's not how it works. You love, period. Love is 100% on you.
How do you, so performance love is a is a concept that I talk about all the time of I do the dance, I get the hug, we're all okay. But then sometimes I do the dance and you're not in the mood to give me a hug, so I do a bigger dance, right? Or I do a different dance, still don't get the hug. Or sometimes I may dance until I'm worn out and I don't get the hug. So how if we're designed to love, and I'm looking at Corinthians 13 because I'm going to pick your brain on this. If we're designed to love, how do we manage with another human being keeping no records of wrongs? Of rejoicing in the truth always, when in addiction, a lot of times we're not getting truth. How do we look at these things that we're called to do in our humanness and stay out of that performance love category?
Well, first, I think it's a mindset around love. I think the first thing is to recognize that maybe we don't know everything about love, haven't been taught everything about love, and there might be a whole different definition of love.
Mhm.
And so being open to the fact that love might be different than you see it as. And I'll tell you, you mentioned love keeps no record of wrongs. I was dreading that one. Like
Mhm.
when I was working on that month, I'm like, oh my gosh, how do you? Because you might forgive, but you don't forget,
Right.
right? So
Right.
how can you keep no record of wrongs? And oh my, if I told you the story, I was had to sleep outside with tarantulas and snakes, and I was kind of upset with these people that made me sleep outside. And at first I was bitter and angry, and then it hit me. Love keeps no record of wrongs. And what that means is, yes, stuff happens. Absolutely. Stuff happens to you, and forgiveness up to you, whatever. But we create the narrative. The narrative is 100% on us. Like two people can be in the same traffic jam.
Mhm.
One of them is honking his horn, his blood pressure's going up, he's shaking his fist out the window, right? He's so upset, he's stuck in this traffic jam. Can you imagine being the next person this guy sees? Right? Because he's
No.
all hyped up and right. But the guy in the very next car, sitting back, relaxing, listening to your podcast, realizing he's not going anywhere, next person he sees isn't so bad. So two people in the exact same situation, but put a whole different narrative on it. So the narrative is on us. The minute we let other people control our emotions, we control through expectations we have on people that just leads to disappointment and loneliness and anxiety and a whole bunch of things, right?
Mhm.
But the minute we let people control us, which we shouldn't, and we give that power away, that's when it's hard to walk in any kind of forgiveness. That's when we forever hold that grudge. They made me sleep outside.
Mhm.
Because really now, like the way my narrative changed with that is I could literally sleep anywhere in the world and be perfectly fine. And that's what I learned from that experience. One of the things I learned. So shift the narrative, and the bitterness, the anger goes away, and the narrative is up to you. I mean, that's your power. You get to pick.
That's a great example. How did you do it with your son when you're struggling so much? And like you said, that baby is all ours to start with. We've put things into it. We put things into it we don't like. How do you shift that narrative and take your power back instead of saying, I'm being acted upon?
Well, I think the frank, very frank, hard to say truth is that so often we look at our kids as a reflection of us.
Mm.
And if people see our kids, they make assumptions about us and judgments about us. And so, in the middle of dealing with my son and trying to help my son out the right way and setting boundaries and doing the stuff, I realized I was doing that. Like I was coming from the wrong angle. I was coming from the don't embarrass me angle. Don't make
Mm.
me look bad angle. I was a good mom, right? So that's what's going on in my head. And when I shifted that and made it about him, and recognizing still that baby I held with the full head of dark hair, and that toddler growing up, and that teenager that was so much fun, and all of that, when I recognize that he's still my son, my
Mhm.
son hasn't gone anywhere.
Mhm.
It's unfortunate that he's dealing with this because it's hard. It's
Yeah.
it's hard for him,
Mhm.
and I think that's part of it too is realizing it's not like it's easy for him and hard for us. It's
Mhm.
hard.
Mhm.
And so to help him through however you can
Mhm.
with boundaries, with the right way, but that's the shifting of the narrative is recognizing him and recognizing that it's not about me. None of it is about me.
How did he begin to respond when you took off the embarrassment layer, or you're making me look bad, or I wanna look like this as a mom? When you were able to take off that layer and look at him, like you said, as this baby I held, the toddler I helped walk, the teenager I had a good time with, when you shifted, what happened for him?
Things did change. Like, I thought my shift really was gonna be only me, like, it was a self thing, right? But when you come from a whole different energy, this whole different place of love and acceptance, and I'm not throwing you out because you have an addiction, and I'm gonna love you through it, and we're gonna be okay, and whatever comes, comes. When you come from that different energy, they people can feel it. People
Mhm.
feel that energy. They feel that love. And so it's not a matter of I love you on the days you're sober, I love you on the days you don't drink or anything like that. Just love. So he did respond and things did change. Conversation changed between us. And it
Mhm.
wasn't so much of a conflict, even though it never ended. I mean, it was always hard.
Mhm.
It's not like all of a sudden it's easy because I
Mhm.
shifted the way I looked at it and the way I thought about it. But uh, coming from a different perspective just helped me to know what tools to suggest or things that were really going to help him rather than let's get rid of this right now and just be done and just mend it, put a band-aid on it, and we're out the door, right?
What's talking? Because I hear this a lot. What's talking when, "Let's get rid of it, let's be done, let's do this." Where are you talking from when you're saying those types of statements?
Well, I think it's a double-edged thing, right? Part of it is, of course, you care about your loved one. Of course, you care. But the other part of it is, if it's over, I don't have to deal with it anymore. If it's over, nobody needs to know about it. If it's over, so it can be a very selfish thing. I
Mhm.
don't want to walk through this anymore. I don't want to go through it. I just want it done. And addiction doesn't work that way. I mean, every once in a while, I run into somebody who said, one day I decided,
Yes.
whatever. But that's the rare person. That's
Yeah.
not the common person.
It is very rare. I have met 2 people in the last 20 years to where they either walked out into nature and they knew they were done, or they woke up the next morning and they knew they were done. But it's extremely rare. So as you're doing this shift, having conversations differently, what were you also doing around boundaries?
I was in a unique situation because I had a business and he worked for me.
Mhm.
And so I was able to say, I need you to go to meetings.
Mhm.
And I even got the form that they use in the courts that he had to get signed every day. And I needed to know that he was going. And I said, do this or you can't work here, basically. Like you need to do this. And he has family and responsibilities and needed that paycheck. And I think so much of it kind of sounds like I had some power over him because of the paycheck. But the reality is he knew he didn't want to live this life, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And by putting these boundaries on him and making him get it signed every day and just saying, but also leaving it up to him, right?
Mhm.
Like I'm
Mhm.
not controlling him. This is what I want. If it doesn't happen, this. If it does happen, great, right?
Mhm.
But you still get to choose. But then for him, and I don't know if it's true for everybody, but I think sometimes it takes, and for him it did, some structure,
Mm.
some path out, some this could change, some hope, some hope for resilience, and that life can look way different in not too long of a time from now. And he needed those boundaries. I think boundaries are important in so many areas of life, and I think that did help him to give him boundaries and something to strive for.
I'm total agreement. Boundaries actually bring us closer rather than pushing people away. And I always say boundaries are things that you can control, not things that you can't boundary people into responsibility. So, you set some boundaries, but he had to choose to do that. When you're looking back on that, and I can hear the voices saying, well, what if he had chosen not to? What would have been your next step?
Well, I would have withheld a paycheck. I would have followed through on my word.
Yeah.
And I made it real clear to him that he's got the choice, but I will follow through on my word. Because at the time, I didn't know if he would or not. But at the time, in my head, I'm thinking, I have to stick with this. I can't back down. If I give him my word that these are the choices and this is the consequence, this is what I'll do if you make this choice or that choice, I have to stick with it. It doesn't do him any good to go back and forth and waver. Okay, one more chance. Okay, one more chance. Okay, it's Christmas Eve. Do I really have to go? Yes, you have to go. Not back down at all. I think that would have done a lot of damage. I think that would have been a big setback for him. So he needed to know that my word was my word. And so that's what I would have done it. I would have done what I told him I would do.
Your yes is your yes, your no is your no, right? Say what you
Mhm.
mean what you say, and don't say it mean. I think that's the shift, is that you weren't saying this out of punishment. You had already decided that you loved him and were going to do loving things for him. Now, when you're doing all this, and what kept you from nagging, from reminding, from driving him to the AA meeting, from making sure he got there, from picking him up? I mean, what kept you from doing those behaviors we know will cause people to run the other way?
Yeah, well, it's so tempting,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
Because you wanna fix things for them, right?
Mhm.
I wanna fix it for him. Can be such the attitude, if I do this, then he'll do it, then he'll get better, then he'll but it's on them. It's
Mhm.
100% on them. You don't have that kind of control. And so there needs to be, I believe, some responsibility that goes along with the recovery. Because if the recovery is so easy, then it's really easy to backslide, right? To go back the other way. If you've worked for it, and it's true of anything in life, right? If you work for it, if you work for the car you're driving as opposed to getting a free car, you treat the car differently. You
Mhm.
handle it differently. You value it in a whole different way. And so, I mean, he was a grown man. He
Mhm.
had to have some responsibility in his recovery. It was up to him.
Now let's get to the really sticky part of this verse. Always trusts. And
Mhm.
if you've been on either side of the addiction equation, or the multifaceted addiction equation, there's lies and manipulation. A lot of what's happening, or what's being said is happening, is not being said. You said in your family of origin, you guys didn't even talk about it, that it was going on. So
Right.
always trust. How do you line that up with the humanness of the people you're going to deal with?
Right. That's a tough one, right? It's easy to do, when you get the concept of love that always trusts, it's easy to do to strangers. If they say, I live on this block or I went to this school, you just believe them. You can just believe them.
Mhm.
But when there's been a pattern of untrustworthiness, of a pattern of telling things that are not true, it's a lot harder to wrap your mind around. Well, how do you walk that out, love that always trusts? So I don't think it's about being ignorant to what's going on or turning a blind eye or just accepting everything that's said, but people that you give trust to want to prove they're trustworthy.
Hmm.
And even in an addiction, if if you argue, if you assume everything's a lie because you've been lied to and it just hurts so bad, so you just have gotten to a place where you just assume everything's a lie, well, where's the truth in that? When are they going to start speaking truth? Because they're just going to assume, you're going to assume it's a lie anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But when you can trust, when you can show, okay, I'm taking your word for it. You know, you said you did this. I'm going to take your word for it. It takes a minute, but it shows them a whole different kind of love. It shows them that they want to earn your trust. They want to figure out how they get out of the lies, how to get out of this pattern that has happened and start telling the truth. And so it's hard.
Yeah.
Not everything with love is
No,
easy.
I'm thinking about that. You know they're lying. They know they're lying. And when I talk about it, I say, don't ask the question you don't want to know the answer to.
Oh
If
yeah,
you
that's
already
good.
know everybody is lying, it's only a matter of pushing punishment and trying to prove, because what we know is people who fall into pretty heavy addiction are amazingly smart. They already know this is going on. It is that root that says, it's that justice root that says they shouldn't be allowed to get away with it. Shouldn't, it's not okay for them to get away with it. How do you deal with that?
Well, I love what you said. You know, don't ask the question that you don't want to hear the answer to. And I think that's brilliant, and I think it's true, and I think you should do that. I think that understanding that their lie doesn't necessarily affect you, or figuring out what lies affect you,
Mhm.
or do they affect you? Are there some that have really any bearing on your life? You
Mhm.
know, if you get into a codependent relationship, there can be some lies that have an effect on you, but a lot of times they're the dumbest lies, right? Like, why lie about that kind of thing, right?
Sometimes it's
Yeah.
such a pattern that they lie about things that I'm like, "Huh, why would you even bother to lie about that? Because I didn't even ask that, I'm not worried about that, it's not on my radar, but you volunteered this information that you and I both know is either an omittal or an untruth." And that's where I really like what you're saying about there's gotta be some opportunity to build trust. You can't just
Mhm.
shut down the whole place.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, because if you really stop and think, what affects me, of what is being said, does it affect my life? Chances are, most of the time, the answer is going to be no. So let it go. Let it go. You don't have to point out a lie. You don't have to point out anything. Just let it go. And I think that helps to start build trust as well. When they know that if they say something, you're not going to attack them right away for it and call them out on it, but that you can just let it go.
Well, and if you here's an interesting thing that is really hard to practice. If you let it go, then you don't have to sit with it anymore. They have to sit with it. But if you go after it, then you become the bad guy because you don't believe them, you never trust them, you don't, you don't really love them because you can't trust them to do da da da. All of a sudden, this firestorm that they've been storing up for this will come at you. And that seems to me to be the total opposite of what you're trying to do. It's kind of the uh-huh. And let them sit in their own things, because when I'm looking at all of the work you've done, you're ready to love them as soon as they're ready to receive.
I'm loving them before they're ready to receive. I'm loving them all the way along. Like, and don't withdraw your love.
Yeah.
Love again, it's up to you. Like, don't withdraw it because something's going on. I mean, if you had a child with cancer, are you going to take your love away?
No.
Like under what circumstances do you stop loving? There shouldn't be any circumstances. There might be times you don't like. There
Yes.
might be people you don't like, but like and love are two different things. Love is walking, talking, like I said, it's who you are. How
Mhm.
you show up with it, how you decide to show it, give it is entirely up to you, but it should be all encompassing. And so the love should never be withdrawn. The love is there. The arms are open for any time they want to come running back, right? But the love never leaves. The love stays. And there are decisions, because love is not a wimp either.
Mhm.
So there are decisions that you make because you love.
Mhm.
Because you love, you set boundaries, like you were talking about. Because you love, you make sure that other harm isn't being done, or there's things that you do because you love that are difficult. Like we want to just pick up the pieces, we want to just fix everything, but backing away from that and realizing you can't is hard, but it's also love. It's also love. One of the greatest things, like I think about a woman in an abusive relationship, and sometimes you hear about women that stay and stay and stay, and you're like, oh my gosh, how do you stay in that abuse? And I believe to show love, the greatest love, you walk away.
Mhm.
Because if you stay in that situation, you're not giving him a chance to change.
Mhm.
He's going to remain the same person if you stay in that same pattern and you stay and just go through it and through it and through it. Walking away is hard, but walking away is love.
It may also be an instrument that God uses to reach the other person. And
Hmm.
that's hard to hear, is you staying may keep your voice louder and the shame actions of abuse louder than what God is trying to share with both you and the partner. Same with children, all those relationships. How do you begin to show this kind of love to yourself?
Well, it's got to start with you, right? I mean, it might sound cliche, but it's absolutely true. And this is what I think. Like sometimes I think about like the Mona Lisa. If the Mona Lisa went up for sale, I can't imagine how many millions, millions and millions Elon or Jeff Bezos or somebody would pay for it, right?
Right?
And because it's a one of a kind masterpiece,
Mhm.
and so are you. You are a one of a kind masterpiece. Nobody ever been like you. There's never going to be anybody like you ever. You're the only one ever. You're a masterpiece created by the master in his image. Like, think about that. Of course, you should love yourself. It's almost like, like somebody gives you an apple pie and you're like, oh my gosh, they're thinking they're gonna love this apple pie, right?
Right.
And then not only are they giving you an apple pie, but they made the crust and peeled all
Ooh,
those apples.
yeah.
And not only that, but they actually picked the apples from the tree. Not only that, they grew the apples. They made the dirt that the apples are growing in. And
Uh-huh.
if we say, "Oh, I don't want that apple pie," man, what kind of an insult is that? And
Yeah.
and I believe that's what we're doing when we look at ourselves and we're critical about ourselves, going, "Oh, I don't look good today," or "I need to change myself somehow," or "I really don't love myself the way I am right now." Whatever it is, that's what you're doing. Is you're saying, "God, good try, nice try, but you kind
Mhm.
of failed here," and God just doesn't fail like that.
No.
You're the way you are. You're created to be exactly who you are. Let yourself be embracing of the beautiful masterpiece that you are.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that I've personally been working through is conviction versus condemnation. So, none of us are condemned. We're all
Mm.
loved. We're all beloved children of God. Occasionally, in a very loving manner, he may convict us just like we would our own children and say, "Hey, we need some behavior change in here," or "This is not as loving as it could be." As you were taking your time to work this out, to work out love is, what what mercies, what graces, what things did God give you as you were working through Love is this.
Yeah, wow, that's such a great question. I'll tell you, one of the things that I really learned is that people can say all the time, "I love everybody. I love everybody." But those darn Democrats or those Republicans, well, then you don't love everybody. And people are not the labels we put on them. They might belong to a club, they might be part of a group, but that's not who they are.
Mhm.
And so I pray all the time, Lord, let me see people through your eyes, see how
Mhm.
you see people. And so God answers prayers. And so when you can look at the heart of a person and not worry about anything else, man, people are pretty darn lovable, no
Mhm.
matter what club they're in, right? Everybody's got something to offer. And when you just really listen, love that is patient, recognizes that this is the most important moment of your life. What's in the past is in the past. What's in the present in the future is yet to come. This moment right here, right now, the most important moment of your life. And if you realize that, recognize that because it's true, whoever you're with, you love them with love that is patient by being fully with them,
Mm.
not being distracted. And I'll tell you, I stunk at this. I was horrible. I thought I could be fully engaged, thinking about who's playing soccer later, what I'm making for dinner, a meeting I got later on, and listen to every word that they're saying. And I had to practice and practice and practice this. And what I learned is I am not that superpower multitasker that can listen to two things, the voice in my head and the voice I'm hearing at the same time, and hear either one of them very well. So when I learned this, that take the time and recognize the importance of this moment, man, my ears opened up. I hear things I never would have heard. I,
Right.
I hear things not based on something I know about somebody, but really what they're saying. And so much language is nonverbal. So you just hear so much more when you're fully present, when you are given the person in front of you the love that is patient.
How would you are there some practical suggestions for someone who is not very good at it, like myself? I wanna do 16 things and go, "Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh." What are some practical suggestions you would give that they could implement today to really be present for those that they care about?
Well, for one thing, recognize what's important. And is the laundry more important than the child?
Mm,
Is anything ever more important than people?
mhm.
Probably not. I was just in a cemetery and it's, John Smith and his dates and Laura Smith and her dates. Nothing is on there about how much money they made, how big their house was, what they drove for a car. None of that information's there,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's all that's there. It might say loving mother or something, but that's it. That's it. So there is nothing more important than people. Otherwise, it'd be on those tombstones.
Mhm.
There's nothing more important than people. And so give people the time and realize what's trying to take your attention. And if there's something you have to do right now, then say to the person, I'm so sorry, can I call you later? Can we talk later? My dinner is about to burn in my stove, so if you can just give me a minute, I'll be right back to you, whatever it is. I mean, of course that's acceptable, but otherwise focus in. Like, I think if I would have known this, to just take the moment, treasure the moment. My son Luke, I mean, he would poke my arm, poke mom, 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 mom. I don't know if
Sure.
anybody has anybody like that, but like I walked around with this bruise on my arm because he was always mom, mom, mom on the phone, whatever you're doing, mom, mom,
Yeah,
mom.
yeah.
And and I look back and I think, man, if I would have turned on the stove for a minute, stopped stirring what I was stirring, look him in the eye, and say, Luke, what do you want? What do you need? He probably would have said, Mom, this truck is red and ran away.
Yes.
Like it doesn't mean it's going to be some long
Yes,
conversation.
yes,
So, yeah,
yes.
yeah. So I think recognizing that nothing's more important than people and then work on your focus. Just focus and really hear.
When you're doing all of the things that you do, what is it that you want people to tangibly receive from your books, from your presentations, from your organizations, what do you want people to tangibly feel and receive?
I I want people to understand and know that first of all, they're loved beyond measure and that they're unique and wonderful and beautiful and created to be exactly who they're created to be. And while you recognize that in yourself, then let other people be who God created them to be without judgment, without putting them in a camp, and saying, this camp I don't like, or anything like that. But give people grace as you want grace. Give people mercy as you want mercy. And man, the world is a happier place when you just love.
Mhm.
Just know what love is and walk it and just love.
Even when you're sleeping outside with tarantulas and snakes and everything.
Even when, exactly.
Uh, Kim, it has been wonderful to visit with you. We've done just some of the third on Corinthians 13. We've just done some of the things that are really a struggle for me. In your book, in your presentations, I'm sure you do a much deeper dive. Tell folks where they can find you.
Well, I'm literally the only Kim Sorrelle spelled my way in the entire world because my last name's ridiculous. It has way too many letters, two R's, two E's, two L's. So Kim Sorrelle, you can find me wherever, but if you go to my website, kimsorrelle.com, I have a 14-day love challenge on there that is free. That I have some other free stuff, but that 14-day love challenge takes you through all 14 of the is's and isn'ts of love that are in 1 Corinthians 13. And it's a powerful thing. It's been a powerful thing for a lot of people, and it's free. Just go, enjoy it, do it, and see what happens in 14 days.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you being here with us on Sober on Purpose.
You, beloved listener, are creative, resourceful, and whole. Do you want to add more purpose to your sober journey? Do you want to make room for the new and make your dreams a reality? Apply today for a dream session. Go to tanyajoya.com. That's TANYAGIOIA.com and apply today. Let's get you dreaming about your new purpose.